Welcome to November's edition of 4 and 4. I'm Kathy Halgren, Director of South St. Paul Public Library, and this month's 4 titles deal with accepting things as they are and moving on, an unusual Irish romance, the pitfalls of nostalgia, and a missing wife. In my first book, The Revised Fundamentals of Caregiving by Jonathan Evison, Ben, nearly 40, has taken a job as caregiver to 19-year-old Trevor, who has muscular dystrophy and is in a wheelchair. We learn fairly early in the book that, like Trevor, Ben is a bit stuck too. We know he was a stay-at-home dad to 2 children until tragedy struck and Janet, his wife, left him. Ben refuses to sign his divorce papers, instead signing up for a Fundamentals in Caregiving course, subsequently meeting Trevor, and they become 2 of the most sexually frustrated, lonely, but humorous people I've had the pleasure of knowing. Trevor's father, Bob, whose entire life seems to be one big accident, has found himself in the hospital after colliding with a billboard. Bob, an Al Gore-like character, is trying to ease back into Trevor's life after having left practically after his birth, so Ben and Trev decide to pay him a visit at his place in Utah. This 7-day trip turns into quite the fiasco as Ben realizes they're being tailed, and they start picking up a few fascinating characters along the way. It's a great American road trip, and Evison writes clever, punchy dialogue as he champions all the lonely survivors among us. With the upcoming election this month in the U.S., Kathleen MacMahon's This Is How It Ends is an interesting portrayal of one American's expectations and hope for change in 2008. The book opens with Bruno Boylan, an Irish-American, landing in Ireland to reconnect with relatives and to explore his family tree. He's just been let go from Lehman Brothers, and throughout the book we're reminded that he doesn't want to go back to America if Obama doesn't win the election. Of course, complications ensue by way of his cousin Addie, a woman who's taking care of her somewhat impossible father, Dr. Murphy, since she's the middle-aged single daughter of the family. A romance follows, but don't get too excited, since Bruno and Addie are not first cousins. For me, the most captivating part of the book is the portrayal of Bruno's nostalgic, romantic view of Ireland, the Ireland of his father, and Addie's realistic, sparse commentary of truth. They do not seem particularly compatible, and yet there's an attraction that can't be denied. She's not excited about visiting her old relatives, and she knows her father isn't going to want to talk about his past, which was anything but idyllic. And Bruno's naive but well-meaning comments about the famine don't help either. Addie's last romance ended very badly. Will she have better luck with a brash, optimistic American? Her sister Della certainly hopes so, and you will too, as you ride with Bruno through the back roads of Ireland into the hearts of the Murphy family. There have been comparisons between this book and David Nicholls' One Day, another great book if you haven't read it yet, but the premise in both books really is different. I loved how MacMahon shows the good, the bad, and the ugly in her characters' lives and brings us closer to them because of it. The saying, "you can never go home again," proves painfully true for Ellis Hawke in Paul Theroux's The Lower River. It seems that many novels are focusing on boomers that wish things could be as they once were, when reality demands facing things as they are. Ellis has just closed his menswear shop in Medford, Massachusetts. His wife has cut him loose, and his daughter wants her inheritance now rather than waiting for it. He dreams of the best years of his life, right after college when he was a Peace Corps volunteer building a school in a remote area of Malawi, Africa. Viewing his marriage and business as 40-year digressions from his real purpose in life, he goes back to Malawi, but you and I know things are going to be very different no matter how remote his village was, for now tourists are seen as hot commodities for trade, and the obsessive love of money, coupled with starvation and celebrity do-gooders, catches Ellis in a web of treachery with no escape in sight. Massachusetts never looked so good. Theroux really captures the confusion and panic that sets in when something goes very, very wrong in a foreign land. It's a bit exhausting as Ellis attempts to escape only to find himself escorted back to the village. But Theroux presents an interesting and somewhat controversial view of relief organizations as well as the social and economic issues that parts of Africa are currently facing. If you haven't heard of Gillian Flynn's Gone Girl, there's no time like the present. It's compulsively readable, yet the characters are absolutely loathsome. Nick and Amy, perhaps the two shallowest people in recent memory, married in New York City, but when they both lost their jobs and Nick's mother becomes terminally ill, they move to Nick's hometown in Missouri. Amy is having a hard time adjusting, to put it mildly, and their marriage has been falling apart through the years. The book opens with the morning of their 5th anniversary, and Amy has disappeared. Nick's chapters are in the present. Amy's go back in time from when they first met up to the present in separate diary entries. I'm about halfway through, and as I'm reading, I can't help but think Nick is being set up as the bad guy. I'm just not sure by whom, because I feel that Amy's diary just isn't telling the truth, and her parents seem like they could somehow be implicated in a crime, but I can't exactly figure out why. And that's all you're getting. One of the great things this book does is show how marriage is a union of two people with all their weaknesses that can easily break apart if there's not a strong foundation when the going gets tough. This book is one of our Lucky Day books, so take a look for these books with shamrocks on their spine. As the holiday approaches, try to find a moment for yourself and a good book to keep you company. See you in January with 4 more titles in 4 minutes.